Hello, and welcome to the Congruency Queens Council podcast. I'm Lori Halliday, WiseHorseWoman. Steeped in decades of therapeutic, somatic, interspecies practices, I have cultivated pathways of deep listening, reflection, regulation, leadership, and counsel. Let's unpack real life together. Issues of racial disparity, trauma, mentorship, mastery, wins and losses as we honor each other's journey and glean the wisdom. We co-create the powerful culture and the conversation of transformation here. There are gifts in the shadow, and so together we go gold digging through congruent and aligned stories and lives. Tune in to the heart-centered, influential leaders of the Congruency Queens Council. Thomas, thanks so much for being here with us today. My name is Lori Halliday, WiseHorseWoman, and this is the maiden voyage of the Queen's Council. And today we have Thomas Pedersen, who is the King Speak for the day. We're bringing in the King Speak. There's a lot of reasons that I'm drawn to speak with Thomas, and I think the primary thing that brought us together in recent times is actually the Black Lives Matter movement. And Thomas hosts an incredible podcast series called Speak for Change. And he interviewed my daughter, Ella Halliday, and me. And I'm so honored to have you here. You've been so incredibly patient with me. We've had, Northern California weather and Zoom challenges and all kinds of things. And I just really appreciate you. I've contacted you for personal reasons to ask about how do the podcasts actually work? Where do you store them? How do you do it? And I feel like you're such a Renaissance man and that you really bridge a lot of different areas that could be super supportive for people who are wondering what to do right now. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in a lot of ways. And also just bringing the voice into the broad open and also into our community around what people are doing that is effective. And in this format, I am really drawn to you primarily because I feel you walk with so much congruency. And to sit in the Queen's Council, I really am inviting the voices of people who are walking the walk. And so without any further ado, I welcome you and just invite you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're loving most and up to right now. And then I'm going to inquire farther.
Well, I'm honored to be on. I appreciate it for reaching out. Yeah, I mean, I guess recently the podcast has been the focus of my life. I'm kind of doing a transition in my music school, kind of backing away a little bit. I'm not teaching as much. I have more employees now. And so, yeah, I've been focusing on the podcast, focusing on a lot of activism with Black Lives specifically. And yeah, a lot of that's really exciting. I feel like recently, this interview's on a very fun time, that I am focused and I'm asking myself, like, what is my authentic path? What is my authentic self? And I'm kind of going in that direction, whatever that is. And I think the main value behind that is, I like to be in the arena doing the things, right? I like to be, falling down, getting back up, instead of sitting on the sidelines, kind of critiquing those who are fighting.
Beautiful, beautiful. What is it like lately to be in the arena? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, I mean, even if it's personal, I know that you and I both are on health journeys and we have those kinds of personal self-care goals. And just like, what's the current arena like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, I think the podcast has kind of launched me into working more with the community. And that that means I have to communicate with people who have different values and different ways of communicating with me. And I think that is a big thing, figuring out how to communicate with other people, how to really make change in a community with such diverse voices. And regarding the health path, yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing struggle. But that being said, I've dealt with body issues and weight issues most of my life. And I think I've come to a point where, because those issues would prevent me from doing things, right? They would prevent me from being in the public eye. Like, I probably wouldn't do this interview in the past because I'd be like, oh, I want to lose weight first before I like present myself to the world or something like that.
I really,
Um,
I relate to that. I
yeah.
resonates with me.
um, but at this moment, I am in the headspace of, this is who I am, and I accept that, and I'm going to move with that, and I just have to kind of learn to love who I am in my body, in myself. And to do that, it's harder said than done, but if you give yourself time, it really does help, because I just refuse to let that hold me back from pursuing purpose or, my goals or dreams. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've literally been just struggling with, it's interesting that we land on this issue. I've been really looking at the idea of intuitive eating.
Yeah.
And then I read some funny meme about it where it's like part-time intuitive eating, and then with the backup feeling of, except for I'll start that when I X, Y, Z, because I first need to get into these other categories. I literally said the same words to Ella just this past week, and
Yeah.
nodding her head and looking at me like, this is the whole problem. You're opening to bridging into a different kind of listening, but you're
Right.
holding on to the previous paradigm and trying to
Yep.
walk into the new section with that old clothing, that
Yeah.
armor, that construct. So,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that is common. It reminds me of when I was doing boxing at a gym, and I was talking to the trainer, and he was saying that a lot of people don't like to come in until they are healthy and fit, right? They don't like to come in until they're like looking good, and it does kind of take away from the point of healthy living and healthy progress. Is, I think the first step is to accept yourself for who you are. And if you can, I share a story about that?
Please, please. Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, so like about 10 years ago, I came to Santa Cruz, and like I said, I've always had weight issues. I've always seen myself as like a big guy, that kind of thing. And I was, at the time, I was like living in the woods in a tent intentionally. I was, just kind of living very simply and just minimalist. And I remember not eating much, but I wasn't really thinking about my body, my food that I was eating. But I always remember like looking at myself and being like, "Oh, you're fat, you're big. I get that." Skip ahead 10 years later, I see a picture of myself during that time, and I was like, "Who's that?" And it's like this skinny guy who's like, super healthy, that kind of deal. But I was like, but I don't remember that, right? And so that kind of showed me the power of the brain, right, of your perceptions. And I think if you can learn to love yourself with all the unflattering camera angles and all the unflattering things like that, I think you'll get what you want. But if you just go after the external superficial goals, you will never get to the where you want. So it's really a mindset shift rather than a physical shift, to me personally.
You are really bringing in the king speak right here. Didn't mean it right at home. So thank you. This is exactly something I'm turning over inside my own self and inside my own body. I'll be 52 this year. And so I
Yeah.
have all these, different ways of looking at things and fears.
Right.
And I also have a sense of like, when is it okay? When is it enough?
Yeah.
And when will I be looking back from 62 at 52 thinking, God, girl, you looked great. You were so fine. Why were you so funny? And so I hear you. It's a headspace,
Yeah.
and we can choose at some point to buy into the life and the body we have and do the things we love, see if we can listen to when we're hungry and when we're not. Like sometimes, like you said, when you're in the woods and you're on a different mission, you're
Yeah.
not in the cycle and the focus of food in the same way. And maybe that's a kind of teacher
Yeah.
that's really needed. um, that quote about living to eat or eating to live, I always kind of rumble that one around in there because I love food. So
Yeah, food's great.
thank you. There was something you said earlier too. I'd love to
Mm-hmm.
bounce back to around how you're having a different experience now, working in the community more,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Because of course, and if you would just please name your other music business and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of bring those in. But I'm curious what's happening now that's different, and what you're learning about the community. So if you would, yeah, share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so before, I own everyone's music school, and you could argue that I was already part of the community through that, right? I was running a music school, but there is a certain level of isolation when you're in your own business and like trying to like literally, right, in your own business and trying to just make money, trying to grow your business, trying to, get clients, hire people, um, that kind of it's very small business mentality, right? And yes, I think that for me, when I got a physical location was when my first step into the community. That happened a few years ago. But recently with the podcast, I feel like because I've interviewed people from all around the world, right? But I also interviewed people locally. And so I'm finding all these really local gems of people and interviewing them and really diving deep into their mind and their thought process, because if you listen to the Speak for Change podcast, it's not just an interview, right? It's like a conversation. It's a different experience. Like we're going through ideas together, and we're kind of going through these different thought processes together. And through that experience, you really start to build connections with people, one individually. And through, word of mouth and meeting different people through this podcast, I'm starting to be part of some organizations. I'm still contemplating it. But,
Would you want to
and
tell us things that you're just what you're thinking about, or what's like, what do you mean? Like, what kinds of things are inviting you, or who's
right.
who's in the field? Like, what have you discovered?
Right. Ever since the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and uh, Arbery, there's been a big pull for this Black Lives Matter movement, which has been happening for a long time, but it's hit the mainstream, right? And I mean, these are the struggles that people have been fighting for 400 years, like a long time, and this is nothing new. And so that kind of drew me as a black man myself, who's mixed race, raised in like a white family, where where they taught me about color blindness, really, understanding that color didn't exist yet at my school. And in my immediate experience, clearly color did exist.
Mhm.
And there were clearly perceptions of me that I wasn't aware of, because my family was trying to protect me, from that reality. And I think so it kind of awoke something in me to have to, figure out this world, make change here. And so in Santa Cruz, we're a really white community. And I have a problem with that. I want it to be more diverse. I want it to be more black, brown. I want to see more brown people, and that's, because that's, when I was a kid, maybe if I had more brown people growing up, like I would be able to see myself in positions of power or be able to have a connection with somebody based on um, similar experiences that we could relate with. And that being said, I did have some people, but not not many at all. And Santa Cruz is like that. There's a level of isolation amongst the BIPOC community around here, and they're all separate. And so a lot of organizations are trying to bring Black people together. And one of them is I have to read off the title. It's the Santa Cruz County Black Coalition for Justice and Racial Equity. That yeah, it's a pretty big title there. And that organization is all about bringing Black people together and trying to create a coalition of people who are in Santa Cruz who are Black, and really have that force behind them, work on issues in the community, but just having that kind of connection in the community is really important. And so I've been working with them, and then at the Tannery World Dance Cultural Tannery World Dance Center, Dance and Cultural Center. Yeah, Black Health Matters initiative or project or program. I've been working with them in highlighting Black voices with my podcast, and trying to also bring connection with that. And there's different projects down the pipeline, but that's kind of been like my goal the past few months have been, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can accomplish.
And you can see how rare your presence is in this county.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. And but that being said, there are a significant amount of Black people here. Not compared to over the hill, but it's really cool to see a community of Black people getting together and talking about these issues. And that being said, there's a lot of nuanced perceptions of what needs to go down and what needs to happen. And I think that happens with any group of people. And so
Yeah.
we are exploring different avenues of how to, you know, get that, to make change locally and to see this county more equitable.
Do you feel that there's a sense of cohesion? What do you notice about this group who've invited you in at some mysterious level? Um, what's the vibe there?
The Black Coalition, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like when you sit together and you meet together and you're,
Yeah.
yeah, what's the feeling?
I
You're,
mean, it's good. I've only been to a few meetings
Mhm.
and or one one meeting, and it is good. It's a good vibe. I think there has been disagreements in the past, but I think, like I said, that's what happens. I mean, there's like 90 members, so you can't.
Yeah.
And and that being said, if you're being real, there are people who believe that just the time old separation of like reformists versus abolitionists kind of mentality, right? This idea of we believe that we can reform a system that is based in white supremacy, and change it to be more equitable, versus the we should just tear down the house and build something new, right? So there's a lot of those dialogues going on.
I just wondered, with so much intensity that we experience ourselves and we're certainly feeling in the collective, I
Right.
wondered, I've seen how it plays out in other places. I was wondering what some of those pieces were here, but we can imagine that there are so many ways to position yourself. And hopefully we can find many points of entry where we can go in together and have those conversations. So I know that your life is full and busy. I don't want you to be burdened, but at the same time, I really know that your voice matters in those conversations, and your energy and your way. You enter things differently as a musician and a nature
Yeah.
lover and a sensitive being. And so in whatever capacity you go, I hope that they can really take advantage and use the value of your voice there.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that.
yeah, what else? I know we're starting to come a little towards the end, but I have waited so long to talk with you and communicate.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna not talk at you. I've been waiting to hear what you've had to say, and I do pay attention to what you have to say. Um, and because you're in this moment where it feels that there's magnetism and draw
Mhm.
towards speak for change,
Yeah.
that is becoming really generative. And I have
Mhm.
felt that with you myself, that when we
Right.
generate something, and I hear you
Yeah.
saying that about these other partners, um, what's up with that? And what are you
Mhm.
feeling? And what is your imagination? And what could you imagine this becoming? I mean, it's
Yeah.
incredible. What it is like beautiful. And every time I go, there's a deep conversation, and something is being shared that really needs to be understood and being said by someone who um, really could have their voice more there out there.
Yeah.
So what do you see? What are you dreaming about?
I'm glad you asked that question. So yeah, the past few days have been transitional for me, and have made me really look at what my mountain is, right? Where am I going, and because like I said, I'm getting a lot of invites to a lot of different things, and my natural feeling inside is be like, yes, yes to everything, right? But my but also I can't say yes to everything, right? I think the most important lesson I've learned from right now is learning to say no. And maybe I should have learned that earlier. But that's something that I've had to, it's hard for me, when someone really values you and sees you.
Write that down again. Learn to say no.
Learning. Yeah, exactly. It's easy to want to just say yes to those people, but you have to really check in about where your mission is. What are you aligned with? Where are you going? Is this going to really serve you? Is it going to help you get to the mountain, or is it kind of just going to take you a little bit off the path, or for something you don't really need? And so these kind of thoughts come up a lot, and so I've been having to reimagine and kind of reset about what I want to do with Speak for Change podcast, right? Because it is bigger than a podcast. It feels bigger than a podcast. I talk to people, and both of us are transformed at the end of those conversations. I've learned numerous lessons and wisdom from my guests that even going back and editing episodes, I come out like, oh my gosh, I needed that today. I needed to hear that today. And it's wonderful. So to answer your question, like I said, I don't know, but what I am thinking is hopefully I can grow it into, doing different workshops or something, doing different kind of more educational services to the community, the global community, people who want to learn about these different ways of interacting with the world, or interacting with activism, or interacting with the combination between personal development and activism and politics, because those two things we've like, for I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always think of politics and like personal development as like separate entities, right? They're in separate sections at the bookstore. you
Mhm.
know you don't buy a politics book to learn about yourself, right? um but at the same time, politics is based on people. They're based on people's emotions,
Your
emotional intelligence.
politics says a lot about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're starting to see identity politics, right? This idea of like associating your identity with a political party, and that's good and bad, and tribalism, and all these different aspects. But I think that's just reality. That's always been the case, where your personal values fit whatever politics you're following, or whatever you believe in your community. And I think learning how to understand those separate worlds and realizing they're kind of one and the same. Think of all the decisions leaders have made, not because of facts or logic, but because they were like emotionally driven or emotionally compromised, so to speak, and not in a bad way. It's just we don't teach people how to have emotional intelligence in our society. You know, we don't teach people how to listen to their emotions. And so I guess Speak for Change podcast for me has always explored this idea of like community, business, or politics, business, and these other things with the arts, personal development, these weird connections, because I think they are essential. So I would love to have some kind of educational platform of being able to, I think, help people and maybe do some coaching or, you know, whatever I can do to help get these messages within the individual on top of just talking about them.
Yes, and you will, and you are. And this is absolutely within your wheelhouse, your bailiwick, your genius. You are absolutely in your genius.
Yeah.
And I think I hear you saying that you would like to be in conversations with people
Mhm.
that have to do with what they love, what they're passionate about in
Right.
their realm of genius,
Yeah.
and how they might step into whatever their next way is of
Right.
being and doing that. And you know that I point to this every time I speak to you, that you have a lot of information around ways to shift and try something new, because that's what you've been doing.
Yeah. I
And
think, yeah.
you have some facility with that because you're living that, you're doing
Yeah, I think that comes from, I think that's probably one of the most fundamental parts of myself is this idea of experimentation. And, you know, when I was a kid, and I, you know, so here's the quick little history less thing about the podcast, right? The podcast was originally called String and Chair Podcast a long time, like maybe a month before Speak for Change podcast became a thing. I don't really talk about this that much, but there was like a month or two. So we're on like episode maybe like 88 or something, you know, not publicly, but behind the scenes, like what I'm working on right now. We're on, I still have like a bunch of episodes I have to edit and publish. So we're maybe on episode 88 right now. But that being said, that only started counting about a month and a half after. So I was String and Chair podcast for a month and a half where I literally did not do any interviews. I just talked for an hour about various topics. And there were people that followed me, which I am still amazed to till, you know, till this day. But I was just like, I need to do something new. This was when the pandemic kind of hit in around April. And I remember being like, I am not feeling it. And so I just did a podcast, and I call it String and Chair. And the reason why I call it String and Chair, this is the reason, was when I was a kid, when my parents would leave, I would tie strings on chairs all across the house. It was, I mean, can you imagine like coming home to like a crazy web of strings? And but in my head, everything made sense. Every little string on each little leg made sense. Every connection made sense. You know, every little, you know, for some reason when I pulled on this part of the string and something would happen, it had no logical sense. Like if you went into it logically, it was a mess. But if you went into it with an abstract creative mind, you can see how everything is connected, even if it is messy, right? And so my life has been fundamentally changed because of that. I see things and I see connections that a lot of people don't see. I see connections with music theory and our current political climate. You know, I see connections between, you know, personal development and how you run a business or how you do accounting. You know, like I see these connections. And so the podcast really was about connections. Um, and Speak for Change came out because I was like, you know, I think I need to have a social justice angle as well, because this is important. And change and connections to me is a connection, right? Constant change. Change is probably the one thing in our reality that we can 100% be sure of. You know, that, you know, God, spirituality, these are all things that require faith. You know, change does not require faith.
it.
Change, you can go out into the woods and see something grow. and know that that thing's going to grow or die or decompose and go in somewhere else. Change is one of those things that even in the universe, you don't even know what's happening. Things are constantly moving and changing.
That's our constant. Change is our constant.
Exactly.
I must be a string and chair theorist myself, because I get that. I get this idea of conceptual frameworks and
Yeah.
networks. And as a woman, sometimes I look at it slightly differently, because when I was in school, I was told that girls didn't do math and girls didn't do
Yeah.
science and those things. I'm aging myself here, but I think they stopped that the next year. But anyway, I have a different kind of thinking around numbers and math,
Yeah.
spatial reasoning oriented. And so if we do like gambling or something, I can get really close, almost to like a 1 point difference. But if I do the long math, it gets kind of murky, because I think I end up back in fourth grade or somewhere,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty confused. And so this idea of string and chair, or this idea of conceptual framework works and maps that overlay each other, where we
Yeah.
start to see the patterns and the similarities. I've talked to you about one of the trainings we do is where we're doing the natural horsemanship at liberty, so free. We're not trying to control them.
Yeah.
And we do cranial sacral, which
Oh,
is a
that's
kind of
cool.
deep dropping in and moving out to the horizon and not trying to control. And so we kind of walk in between those states over
Right.
that weekend together. And so I'm also a string and chair theorist. I love that. I love that. I think you might need to like trademark that and write a book about that.
Yeah, I think
Such a
it's a good book idea, string and chair. Yeah, because I think that's the thing, right? That's the yeah.
that's that curiosity and that,
Yep.
like you said, the connectivity. And I love it that the life that you have at the moment, you can realize is a part of you in this moment, building string and chair diagrams like Buckminster Fuller, like
Yeah.
having a three-dimensional way to be. And I also want to mention that because I've been feeling this myself, that I heard you say, wouldn't it be great if I could reach more people?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the one-on-ones are great and powerful, and people are
Mhm.
blessed who work with you, and blessed who can work with me. And at some point it really does become a question of like how many hours we have, and how many people could we have been with, or touched, or moved along, or assisted. And
Right.
so I encourage you, and we can speak privately about it. I do have one other question though. I encourage you to create your flagship offer,
Yeah.
and for it to be an educational piece around exactly what you're talking about. And because I've bugged you so many times, I have an idea about what people would love to bug you about. You could interview me on that and take notes about how to build that first offer.
Yeah.
Um, it might be Gen X's might need different things, but I have one other quick question, which is a little self-serving,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is do you work with a coach? Are you currently working with a coach?
Oh, do I work with a coach? So here, I used to work with a coach. I worked with him for about maybe 3 months.
Mhm.
Um, and that was he helped me with Speak for Change, like gain the name,
Mhm.
figuring out the name. He was like, you need it, because it was string and chair at the time when I met him. And I was like, here's my podcast. Like he was trying to get me to
Mhm.
figure out what I want to do with it,
Mhm.
and I was like, I had my first interview. It sounds really good. I love the interview platform. And he, yeah, the thing with me and coaching, I feel like the one thing he definitely taught me was how to take, he was not a yes guy, right? And I love that about him. So like, he would say things and I would get automatically, I'd be like defensive. And it was funny. I would be like, "Ugh, well, no, that's not what I meant, and I would I'd find myself getting really defensive. But I think that helped push my mind into new realms. And he had so much patience. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And
Different feeling to me now than the last time I talked to you.
yeah,
There's just like a little different flavor here. And I thought you had mentioned that you had worked with a coach. And
yeah,
I recommend to people to have a therapist and a couples
yeah,
counselor and a coach and work out with a friend or like whatever you can manage
yeah,
in life to get a good team.
yeah.
So yeah,
I
I just
think
kind of was wondering what is supportive to you.
I think the shift in me recently has been, I mean, I run a podcast, right? That is, we are literally coaching in the podcast, right? I'm like asking these questions. People are asking questions of me. And, Michael, who is the coach I had for about 3 months, Michael Michelle, I would recommend him to anybody. He helped me like kind of push me in the right direction. And from there, I don't know, I think being put into a lot of public situations and having to really assess myself,
Mhm.
it's been a lot of work. A lot of personal development work, a lot of asking myself questions, a lot of showing up even when I am, you know, insecure or feeling down, and then also checking in with myself. I stopped drinking caffeine recently. That's a big deal for me. Right? I guess technically I have stopped drinking coffee because I still drink decaf coffee. But
It's a
I,
big difference. There's a
it's a
big
human,
difference. As a heavy
yeah.
coffee drinker, not the same. So
But
yeah, I've done it before too, and it really literally has been one of the biggest game changers. And so thank you for instigating that for me again, right here, right now, because it messes with my sleep, and my sleep is nothing good.
yeah, I found caffeine. So here's the real talk, right? I suffer from anxiety and, depression, and to the point where if I get really overwhelmed, I will want to hide, just under the covers, not get out, right? And caffeine, what happens is when I am put into more and more situations where I'm outside of my comfort zone, caffeine is literally liquid anxiety for me. So I drink it and I'm like, man, I feel horrible. I can't do anything. And so I was forced, and I was glad I was forced. I think my body was telling me before my mind was telling me that you're going to eventually stop this soon. Because the last time I had to stop caffeine was during school when I was in a jazz class and an ensemble with a teacher who is like a intense coach like teacher who will call you out and you're playing in front of people and your hands are all sweaty. It was nerve wracking.
Whew.
Yeah. And I think from my body was like, this is the similar feeling to that. You're going out, you're doing interviews, you're talking with people in the moment, you're having meetings a lot and you have to be clear. You can't be blinded by your anxiety.
Yeah, so
And
edgy because that anxiety can be so edgy when
yeah,
we're actually needing to be receptive and
right.
do that active listening and drop in.
Yeah.
I'm super nourished by my conversation with you. And so when you say to me, it's like we're coaching, or you say to me, we're asking the deep questions and we're all
Yeah.
getting affected. I had the same experience the last time you were interviewing Ella and I,
Yeah.
and Ella and me. And um, so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be with you, to be here again. And I am really looking forward to what it is next. And so I'd love to have some private conversations about it because I'm looking at the same things and um, would love to help you in any way I can. Thank you again for all the ways you support me and all the ways you're supporting the people in our community. So many people I love. I haven't had a chance to listen, but I know you were with Sarah Cruz recently.
Oh, yes.
We did a training together and we're still collaborating. So thank you. Deeply thank you. I will keep bugging you and I'll let you know how this looks when we wrap it up. It's a wrap. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much. If there's anything left that you want to say, or an invitation, or point to like any places where people can find you for this like life pivoting moments The string and chair magic factor. Yeah, just so people can find you.
Yeah. So if you want to find me, you can go to speakforchangepodcast.com, or you can go on Instagram. It's probably, if I'm going to be honest, yeah, Instagram is probably a better way of contacting me.
True.
I'm pretty active on it. And yeah, if you want to get into music lessons, I recommend you go to my music school, everyone's music school, uh, because our mission is to create positive, lasting change in people's lives with music education. And so, if you if you vibe with anything I'm saying, you're gonna vibe with that school, because all our teachers are, they're trying to get that mission fulfilled, and we have meetings about it, and we constantly are trying to influence how music and the arts can really make positive and lasting change in people's lives. So
Everyone's music school.
everyone's music school. Yeah, just
Everyone's music school.
you
Your
know.
people are out there spreading their love like strawberry jam and spreading their jams like love.
Exactly, right.
Love it.
And so yeah, that those are the probably the two places where you can find me. Speak for Change podcasts, Instagram is, you can especially get a hold of me there.
And message you. That's where I message you.
Yeah, just message me there. If you don't have Instagram, just go to the website and email. Yeah.
Thomas, thank you so much. I'll be catching up with you soon.
Perfect.